And that jarring cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast. It's new Doctor Who Blu-ray week. It was the release of season 13 earlier this week. I'm excited. I haven't watched it all yet, but I'm very, very much looking forward to going through all the extras and, of course, watching the episodes. I'm Kenny Smith, and like the X-Files, I am not alone because I'm here with three guys who make podcasting so much more fun than sitting on my own recording those book episodes. We'll start with the gentleman who's nearest to me in terms of geographic location. He's looking around now, his red living room.
It's me. Hello. Yes, I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
And then next nearest to me is a man who looks like he's got bamboo blinds and a plant growing out his head.
Yeah, bamboo blinds and pampas grass. Yep, John down in Greenock, the Venice of the Clyde. So it's lovely to be invited back to hang out with such admirable... Oh, there was almost a quote in there. But yeah, splendid chaps, all of them.
And finally being menaced by a giant dog.
Yes, I'm being menaced by a giant dog. Hi everyone, Steevie here. Lovely to be back with you all, the three of you, and everyone else who's listening out there wondering what on earth we're going to discuss this week.
Absolutely, because when I was going through my Blu-ray, as I like to do, and looking at all the extras, lo and behold, there was the original version of Pyramids of Mars, the Louis Griefer version, the one that had been talked about, but I didn't know anything about beyond the fact that Robert Holmes rewrote it from scratch. And my goodness, what a hell of a rewrite job he had. So
very much so,
yes.
As my old high school biology teacher used to say.
And this is a 13-page document here from the Pyramids of Mars outline. And the third word in it is Sutek, because it begins with a bit of background. Seth Sutek, whom the Greeks called Typhon, was the name of Osiris's evil brother, who finally became the incarnation of the spirit of evil in eternal opposition to the spirit of good. But we'll not go through the whole thing because I'd be here for about another 20 minutes reading it out, but we'll not do that. So, Pyramids, let's talk about the TV version very, very briefly, because Dave and I talked about it a wee while back. We absolutely love it. So how about you, John?
Yep, it's up there among my all-time favourites of the show. I think I'm probably the only one here who watched it on broadcast.
Wow.
Yeah, I am that old. So I have very vivid memories of lots of things, but particularly, and I know a lot of people do mention this, but the mummies seeing to the hapless poacher is etched in my memory. The mummies, sometimes I know people say they look quite clumsy and not like your classic mummy, but they were, to my mind, as a what age was I? 6, 7 at the time. I was totally traumatized by them, and I remember the cliffhanger of episode 1 as well. Not just because it came back into the zeitgeist, courtesy of Russell T Davies, but I remembered it at the time as well. And there were just lots and lots of good things about it, and like many others too, I devoured the novelisation when it came out as well. So it's kind of doubly beloved, I think, as a story. So for me, looking at this kind of mythical documentation, I was gobsmacked at, well, first of all, how many of the little kernels of ideas from the original proposal did in some way work their way into the final realised TV story, but also how massively different, and I have to say, much better the story ended up. Anyway, I'll keep my powder dry, or my gelignite dry, for the rest of the conversation.
Fantastic. Did you know that the poacher was played by Roberta Tovey's dad, George Tovey? Wow. That's my useless trivia fact.
Yes. Yeah.
And also, I always thought if I was going to die, I would love to be killed between the giant chest units of two large mummies.
A mummy hug.
Well,
That's such a Kenny Smith way to die. At least he
It
was
is.
happy. At least he was happy. I have to say very quickly, I do like Pyramids of Mars, but I must qualify that because I've now reassessed it, and I think that it's great for the first couple of episodes, but it absolutely dies in its arse with episode 4, which is just all padding. And Benjamin did a great thing when he cut most of it out for the Omniboo for TARDIS Tales last year. So yes, I do think it's excellent to a point.
What about you, Stevie?
I absolutely loved it, and I didn't watch it on broadcast apart from the last bit, which stays etched in my memory forever, which is the house catching fire and the Doctor and Sarah running to the TARDIS and then the building burning. And I just remember that from a child. I must have sneaked in because I wasn't allowed to watch it. I must have sneaked in. They were watching it and I saw that. And it just brings back so many memories. I love the novelization. Love the original thing. I what Davis said, he's right. It does die in episode 4, and the cut one, fix that. But I still like watching the original. I have to say, I still enjoy.
Yeah, it's weird. It's only latterly that I kind of, I can't remember why or when I'd watched it. I don't know if we'd watched it to talk about it. I can't remember, but I'd always thought it was great. But just the last time I watched it, I was like, oh, hang on, wait a minute, come on. And you just get a sense of Robert Holmes just going, type. You know, I've got to do this. They need this by Wednesday afternoon, and it's already Monday evening, But it doesn't detract from how good a lot of the opening stuff is. And as you say, the final shots of the Priory catching fire are amazing. That's all really, really well done.
Yeah. And the performances are brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Tom Baker is on fire. Liz Sladen is on fire. The rest of the cast are absolutely, not quite literally, but yeah, on fire. And it's a great performance from everyone, including the mummy operators.
Yeah.
They could have fallen and literally fallen flat, but no, they're quite a menace.
It's another what's the word, segment in the great Doctor Who Beatles crossover as well. Because what's the name of the lad that plays Dr. Warlock? Peter, is it? I want to say May. It's not Mayhew. That's Chewbacca the Wookiee.
No, I can picture him.
Yeah, someone look it up quickly, because he plays the jeweler in the second Beatles film Help, and has a great scene with John Lennon when they're trying to cut the ring off Ringo's finger that Leo McKern and everyone are after, and they have a sort of electric sort of wheel, and John Lennon says, "Not the wheel," and Peter Thingy says, "Even the Royal House of Hanover had the wheel, sir." And then the wheel breaks, and John says, "Jeweler, you failed, and if you don't stop me, I'll recite the whole film."
It's Peter Copley, Dave.
That's the one. Yes, so there we are.
Well done. I think Bernard Arshard is brilliant as Marcus. Your hands.
Yes.
And Lawrence, of course, brilliantly brought to life by the legend that was Michael Sheard.
Yeah, he was such nice characters. You could have flipped them into, albeit it would have been a weird Poirot, but you could have flipped it into a Poirot with those characters. You could have had them before Pyramids of Mars, a Death of the Nile type of thing.
Someone needs to write some Agatha Christie fan fiction that features them before they end up before Pyramids of Mars, a prequel, if you like. Challenge extended. Someone.
Your big finish.
Yes.
So we've talked about the TV version, the one that we got.
Mm-hmm.
We're now going to discuss the original, but the listeners might miss out. They might not have a Blu-ray PDF reader. So, for the benefit of the lovely listeners, we've put together an audio version where we've got 4 of our podcast pals to come on and read it for us and bring it to life. And it's all set to the Heathcliff Blair score. So, you can hear Doctor Who and the Pyramids of Mars.
Doctor Who and the Pyramids of Mars. Episode 1.
Doctor Who is with his friend Professor Fawsey, who is at an international emergency conference on food resources. Fawsey's team, which includes Dr. Robertson, a Scots agronomist, are working on a grain which will grow on the surface of the moon and which, if successful, would solve the Earth's food problem for at least a millennium. Fawsey has only to put the final touches to his formula. Unfortunately, Doctor Who, fascinated by Fawsey's account, is called away by a call from Mrs. Smythe, wife of the Director of Antiquities at the British Museum. The man, it appears, was bitten by a scorpion which had arrived with a sarcophagus newly shipped from Egypt. The bite has not responded to treatment, and Smythe, half mad and cowering with fear, is only able to say something about Sebek, rocket, end of the world, Book of the Dead. It is gibberish, even to the Doctor, but the man's obvious terror impels Who to investigate. The sarcophagus contains the mummy of an Egyptian prince, or so they believed, except when they open it, it is the mummy of a man with the head of a crocodile, dead. The thoughtful Who identifies the crocodile as the form taken by the Egyptian god Shebek, first lieutenant of Seth himself, the incarnation of evil and lifelong and deathlong enemy of the gods Osiris, Isis, Horus their son, and the jackal-headed keeper of the dead, Anubis. An alternative form of Shebek is a scorpion. Yes, but what has all this to do with Unit and the end of the world? Who has no answer yet, but comments that God or man, Shebek has been dead for 4,000 years, and dead men don't bite. As they leave, we see an eye on Shebek light up, and the eyes of the dead crocodile man open. Doctor Who goes to the museum library and asks for the Book of the Dead. In it, he comes to a passage which interests him. It reads, "I traverse the paths of the heavens. I reside in the divine Eye of Horus. The Eye of Horus gives me eternal life." And later, "I land on Earth at the right moment. Who decides it's time to use the TARDIS?" In the museum, an attendant calls on another. Something strange appears to have happened to the 6 or so mummies. They each appear to be wearing an amulet which wasn't there before, an eye. They decide it's to do with the head of the department and go off. Using the TARDIS, Who visits a high priest of the Egyptian First Dynasty and asks him a very important question. According to Egyptian mythology, Seth, Sebek, and some 74 followers killed Osiris and were dispersed by Osiris's son Horus and his mother Isis. What happened to them? The head of the department arrives at the mummy room and finds that none of the mummies are now wearing eye amulets, but there appears to be one more than before. Who is explaining his theory to Jane, say, and the Brigadier? According to what he has found out, the entire mythology could be based on actual events, visitors to ancient Egypt from another planet, visitors with an extraordinarily advanced technology. The war between Horus/Osiris and Seth/Sebek could have arisen either from the travellers quarrelling, the first came as a civilizing mission, the second as a destructive force, or there were two sets of travellers. The important things are that the possession of the eye gave the owner enormous power, telekinesis, etc., etc., and that they knew through pyramid power the power of suspended animation for thousands of years. It was vital for them to know whether they are dealing with powers of light or darkness. As if to answer the question, the director of the gallery approaches the mummy room and begins to inspect the extra dummy. A fold of bandage unwraps and winds itself round his throat. The discovery of the dead director answers one question and poses another. If these are the resurrected followers of Seth, Why now, of all times? Why choose now, after several millennia? The answer is given in another place. Professor Fawsey is working late on his formula when he jumps back from his desk in alarm. He has been bitten by a scorpion.
Episode 2. Who sees Fawsey now half mad? The chap is able to trace out what appears to be an ideogram, but which Robertson identifies as the basis for the formula. He points out the urgency of completing the work. A processing plant is standing by. It is already arranged that a shipment of the new grain be rocketed to the moon within days. Who jumps to the conclusion that this is what Sebke and his followers are hell-bent on stopping, and instructs Robertson to isolate himself completely and to work against time. The formula must be delivered to the processing plant on schedule. Meanwhile, they go off to the mummy room. One way or another, the mummies must be neutralized. But even as they are speaking, Sebek begins to operate. The mummies begin to move, their eyes to glow. When Hu and his party arrive, they find their passage to the mummy room barred by an invisible force, which when they try to penetrate, gives them blinding headaches. Hu recognizes the telepathic power involved and the impossibility of coping with it, but the Brigadier, now convinced that the food experiment must proceed, arranges to blow the entire mummy room sky high. Meanwhile, Jane, or someone, has found that here is another entrance to the mummy room and has taken it. She enters the room from the other way just as the charge is primed to go off. She stops them just in time and leads them to the room. It is empty. Sebek and the mummies have gone. Where are they? Back in his study, Robertson works like mad and completes the formula. He dispatches it to the director of the processing plant. When Hu and his companions arrive, he is triumphant and happy. The schedule will be kept. But when he returns to his study, we see that standing there is Sebek.
Episode 3. The Brigadier relaxes. He frankly doesn't understand what has happened. It's some form of mass madness. Doctor Who can't of course accept that. They then get a phone call. The mummy room is back to normal. They go there and indeed everything is as peaceful as ever. It might all have been a bad dream. The words give Doctor Who his clue. He must have a word with Robertson. Has he really delivered the formula? Where is the so-called processing plant? Doctor Who's hunch is correct. Robertson, celebrating with his wife, has a sudden headache. He retires to his room. There he is beset by the most frightful visions. Animals, half men, half animals, straight out of the ancient Egyptian mythology, until he is driven insane. Doctor Who insists on full details about the processing plant, and is eventually given it. When they get there, the director assures them that everything is working on schedule. But he refuses them admission and issues an order to the security forces to kill Doctor Who and his party on sight if necessary. Doctor Who struggles with the director and, forcing back his sleeve, discloses the bite of a scorpion. But it is too late. He and his companion are placed under arrest. He protests that he has the Brigadier's authority, and the director allows him to contact the Brigadier, who promises to arrive forthwith. Meanwhile, the director, acting quite normally, is in touch with the moonshot and arranging for the transportation to the launching pad of the sacks of seedlings or whatever. In the workshop itself, the technicians are working normally and happily. The question is whether or not it is Doctor Who is insane, whether it is he who is having a nightmare. Indeed he is, and he is suddenly aware of an ibis goddess at his side, bidding him to get into the workshop and see what is happening. When he comes to, he is free. He and Jane manage somehow to gain access to the workshop and find, inter alia, that the happy technicians, etc., are working under the control of silent mummies. In another place, they find an even grislier sight, the green-faced mummified body of the Brigadier. They try to stop the grain going off to the launching pad, but succeed only in salvaging one handful. The lorries go off, and Doctor Who rushes the grain to a soil biologist, who is able to tell them that it is a nutrient, some organism, which would erode the moon, and so, by definition, destroy the life cycle of the Earth. They are just in time to hear on the TV that the moon probe has just been launched successfully.
Episode 4. The moon probe must not be allowed to reach the moon, or Earth itself is doomed. Unfortunately, Rocket Control appear to have no control at all. None of their radio instructions affect the probe. Something else is controlling it. They rush to the mummy room to find that all the mummies, Serek included, are encased in what appear to be plastic pyramids, lying north to south. On the face of it, it is they who are in control of the moonshot, and the pyramids are both unapproachable and impervious to fire or shot. They have to be stopped, even if they blow up the entire British Museum with all its treasures. But once more, Doctor Who is back with his hieroglyphics and his Book of the Dead. The answer is there, both in mythological terms and in modern scientific terms. There has to be a central control, and the control is Seth himself. Where is he? The TARDIS returns them to ancient Egypt and back to the High Priest, who Sphinx-like answers in a riddle. In the place which never ends, in the heart which never stops beating. To the Doctor, that means only one place, the pyramid at Cheops with its labyrinth. They go there, and a blind man with a dog offers to take them, warning that the Lance of Seth, if they find him, will paralyze them into permanent immobility. Inevitably, they are lost in the maze, misled by the blind man, and leads them into the presence of Seth, armed with his lance and the Eye of Horus. He welcomes them and tells them that he is invincible. He points his lance at them and they freeze, unable to move or blink, then rambles on about his victory, and says that when he addresses the Eye of Horus to them, they will achieve permanent immortality. And they see themselves, mummified, green-faced. He then does so, but he has forgotten the dog who goes for him, and he has to defend himself, dropping the eye. Suddenly mobilized, Doctor Who grabs it and turns on Seth, who shrieks and disappears. In his place are two other images, Isis and Horus. Doctor Who returns the eye to Horus. He looks heavenward and appeals to Osiris. In another place and another time, the shattered watchers on the TV screen see the moon probe blow up. Back on Earth, Doctor Who and Jane visit the mummy room. All is as it ever was. Jane asks Doctor Who how it was that he resisted the Lance of Seth, and his answer is laconic. Rice pudding! He understood that the lance had an effect on the central thought processes. He defended himself by concentrating all his mind on rice pudding. I didn't know you like rice pudding, Doctor, she said. I don't. I hate it. One more thing. The death of the dog. Jane is sorry for it, but Doctor Who solves that one too. He shows her a picture of the god Anubis, the jackal-headed or dog-headed god. It has the same face as the dog we've seen. You mean it's not dead? It's immortal? Doctor Who keeps a poker face. I don't believe in all that demonology, he says flatly, and then throws a stick at a dog. The one we've seen before.
There we go. Big thanks to our 4 readers there. Episode 1 from Craig Brawley, Episode 2 from James Hadwin Bennett, Episode 3 from Peter Watson at the Earth 2 podcast.
Woo!
Hi, Peter, if you're listening.
Hi, Peter, if you're listening.
If you enjoyed that reading of Episode 3, please send an email to the earth2podcast@gmail.com, and Peter will be delighted to pass it on and then tell me that you enjoyed it.
Peter, you don't have to email yourself. That's okay.
And finally, Episode 4 was brought to us by Ken Moss of Maverick Productions. So big thanks to everyone for taking the time to do those for us.
It was so good.
Beautiful.
That was
wonderful. We need
atmospheric.
We need some more of those. Can we find some more first drafts on the Blu-ray drive and get some people to read them so that we can react and talk about them? Because that was really fun. It was kind of crazy, wasn't it? I was listening to. I listened to it 3 times to try and get the measure of it, and each time I just found myself thinking, "Has Stephen? Was it Stephen? What was it? What was his Lewis
Griefer?
Lewis Griefer, right? I'm thinking of the pseudonym that went out under. I think Lewis Griefer. I kind of thought, has he even seen Doctor Who? Or did he maybe just read an issue of TV comic at some point in the past? It was mental.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the companion Jane someone.
Whatever.
Jane or someone, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the way that Who was the Doctor's surname.
Yeah.
It was the way, especially in the first couple of episodes when our readers were having to refer to Who deciding to do something or Who said, I was just, this is hilarious. You can just imagine Robert Holmes just going, nope, have a drink, start typing, fresh sheet of paper.
It clearly subconsciously affected Steevie because he said earlier on, I wasn't allowed to watch Who. Yes. Or maybe that became canon in the day household.
I wasn't allowed to watch Who?
Or whatever.
Yeah,
it's funny how that appears about 3 times. I think it's like Jane or whatever, and then there's something I want to talk about with the seeds or whatever going to the moon. It's just bonkers.
I feel the need now to try and antagonise as many other fellow Doctor Who fans as I can by going forward and referring to William Hartnell as my favourite Who, and saying that, whilst William Hartnell's my favourite Who, I think Tom Baker and David Tennant are probably the best of the Whos, and just calling it the lead character Who at all times for a few months just to annoy people.
I know what Who mean. Yes, that'll become the official PO3 designation for the character on the Twitters and other social medias for the next month because we think it's funny.
Yeah, and you can also add Vian to the end of that, Dave.
Oh,
but we might get cut.
Oh, look! Oh, serious face, serious acting.
Oh, John's all right. He didn't react to it. John's all right.
I know not to look up.
Absolutely. So, John, what were your thoughts on it?
I thought it was, I don't want to say bonkers. It was, as I said a moment ago, I think it's really interesting to see that there's lots of kernels of ideas, lots of really interesting stuff which work their way into what we did get to see on screen. But also there were things I think that we lost because maybe they were a little bit too ambitious or maybe a little bit too out there. But I got the sense that this is someone who, first of all, knows his stuff. As I looked through the kind of the explanatory notes at the start of it, I learned a lot about Egyptian mythology that I didn't know already, and the different facets and faces of Horus and stuff like that. So this is someone who's obviously immersed himself quite a lot in the lore. So we have to respect that. But I think it was just an embarrassment of riches, perhaps, that there were just too many possibilities that were either too hard to convey in a BBC budget, but also some things that just weren't really thought through, and they were just like, oh, that's a good idea. But I just got a sense of this mind that was kind of fizzing with potential and possibilities, and just plonked it all down on the page. And for me, the most interesting part was not really, although beautifully read, was not really the kind of the plot proposal, but actually the quite painstaking efforts of Robert Holmes to to refine it and make sense of it and things like that. So you kind of get the sense of this very vivid, imaginative story being presented, and then you've got someone with the kind of the practical writing and editing chops of Robert Holmes saying, right, okay, this won't work, but maybe this will. But what really struck me was that even at the last of the documents that we have in the kind of back and forth correspondence between them, it's still quite different from what we see on the screen. So there's a kind of a missing bit, and maybe it does come down to, as Dave was saying, him tearing his hair out on a Tuesday afternoon, saying, right, how am I going to finish this? But I think what we got is remarkable, looking at all the stuff that kind of led up to it, and this kind of, as I said, this gap, and then what ends up on the screen. I think it's still remarkable. And also, what I wasn't aware of until I was looking at the kind of some of the finer print in this was just how far back this goes. Like July 1974 was when Robert Holmes was kind of writing back to Lewis Creefer about this, and kind of thinking, gosh, this is a long gestation. It must have been quite a protracted and maybe at times painful process to bring something to birth out of all of this.
Yeah, I think there was an awful lot in it, and it became very convoluted for me. Excellent readings, I should add, but when you think about the stuff going to the moon and then going to do this and everything else, you were adding an awful lot of sci-fi elements into it, which I'm quite glad they reduced. And I put it to you that the resultant Pyramids of Mars can almost be viewed as a historical story, because there's you've got your time travel, and you've got aliens, but they're all historic aliens. Everything is set within a world that doesn't rely on technology apart from the end resolution.
Yeah.
And the stuff that was written originally was all very high tech, going to the moon, rockets, etc., etc. And that would have blown the budget. I mean, they obviously had all these, a lot of this Egyptian stuff in stock ready to go. You didn't have to build a rocket, and even the projectile that was going to release him in the original didn't have much to do with it. So it was interesting to see what they had taken from it and put into the original. I think, possibly just too much, and a lot of toing and froing, a lot of ideas. But that is basically, Stevie, write me a Doctor Who story, and I'll shove everything in I like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if it had been refined by the original, writers and everything, what would it have become? What would we have ended up with? I'm not sure, but it's. I mean, me and Kerry have obviously been doing the Schalke Doctor stuff, and it's different from that because you can see how the Schalke Doctor stuff would all form into traditional Who. This kind of stepped out from there. That was what you were saying, Dave, or whoever had he actually watched it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that surprised me, one of the things that surprised me the most about it was that it was basically, the original was a contemporary Earth unit story. That was really interesting, the Brig being involved and stuff. So you kind of thought, obviously, one of the things with that series was how they phased the unit people out. It's, gradually, and you sort of think, right, did that have any, you start speculating, did that have any impact on what they did with Android Invasion, or what they did with, were they planning a contemporary Earth set story for this midpoint in the season? Was this the one that was originally going to be it? And then when they changed it so much, that's when Android Invasion got slotted in, or were they going to do a couple? That was just sort of things I'd never thought about before, about the planning of that season and everything that had gone into it.
And of course, there's the throwaway, well, not even the throwaway line in the original with the Doctor saying he's fed up of doing stuff for the Brigadier.
Of course.
And that, ties in. So maybe they were kind of trying to pull that away. I was also a bit disturbed that I couldn't work out in that draft, did they kill off the Brigadier?
Yeah, you mentioned that he's been green and mummified.
Green and mummified, is that it? Is that the end of the Brig? There's nothing in that draft that says everyone who is mummified is now fine.
Right, that's true, yeah.
So, maybe Robert Holmes is looking at it and saying, killing off a popular character, even if we don't want to use him just now, is probably a wee bit beyond the pale.
That's what gave them the idea to kill off Benton in Android Invasion, then, isn't it? And that is a hill that I die on. Honestly, watch episode 4, everyone.
Yep.
Never mind. Don't watch the Graham Harper interview yet. Pause on your viewing of Behind the Sofa. Just go straight to the last half of episode 4 of Android Invasion and tell me I'm wrong.
Benton is dead.
He is. He absolutely is.
Interesting.
If there's a title for a podcast.
Benton is dead.
Benton is dead.
Get John Levine to host it.
Yeah.
I'll host it with John Levine.
Okay, you pop down to Salisbury and see him. I've still never seen him, but there we go. Anyway, I think it was a fascinating document. It's a lot of Robert Holmes's responses are fascinating, but there's one that I've highlighted here in my electronic highlighter. Obviously, I'm not going to scribble on it, and it's just talking about the part of the story that was set in Mars. And in his notes, this was written to Louis Griefer on the 5th of July 1974, where he gives a detailed breakdown as to what he thinks about the story and where it should go. He notes, Barry Letts suggests they need not all belong to the same species or indeed be indigenous Martians. They are the remnants of some ancient galactic federation who came from a different system to our own part of the galaxy. First stop was Earth, trouble with Seth, then they moved on to set up their powerful life support pyramid on the inhospitable and just acceptable planet of Mars, which is interesting. There's a bit of a continuity note in the fact that Barry Letts was still hanging around then.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, because you think he'd be long gone. That's fascinating.
Yeah, because I always assumed that after Robot he'd have been way out of there, but
yeah, maybe he just hung around, or popped into the office every so often to where they were kind of getting up to speed, because he did direct Android Invasion, didn't he?
Yes.
So it's massive. That just opens up more questions. Interesting.
It's fascinating, just the comments about, an awful lot of stuff that's there. The background very much is what we get in the finished story, where Robert Holmes is setting out the background. Noting that the Egyptology is colourful and macabre top dressing, but that is all. Seth and Shebek, therefore, are simply our standard chauvinistic aliens, around whom a lot of legends and mythology have accrued. And he goes on to detail that, and very much that's sort of like the background setting up to the Osirans. The whole stuff about the moon aspect with taking seeds to grow up there, it just seems quite irrelevant in a lot of ways, doesn't it?
Yeah. It just overcomplicates there. I think, obviously a lot of research gone in, and we've got all that documentation about who's what within the gods and so on. And it's good that they pared that down as well, just to give us the overview, bad man, also bad people, but not as bad as him. And that kind of ties in. And I think it probably aimed at the time to young boys and girls who were doing Egypt at school.
Sure. And
they were Tutankhamun and everything else, and they're learning about all this, and suddenly it is the famous Yeti in the loo, isn't it? This could be happening next door to you. Or you're visiting a museum and you're going to be... Egyptian stuff for a while always freaked me out. I'm not saying it's because of that one bit of Doctor Who I watched, but, there's a huge mythology behind there, so I wonder whether they were tapping into that as well, thinking this is going to do the job and frighten the kids and entertain the adults.
Yeah. What works for me and what I find most impressive, though, is that what ends up on the screen is a really good balance between the Egyptology, mythology, and the science fiction part of it. The fact that these are, super powerful aliens, almost kind of cosmic divine forces in themselves. And you sort of see a little bit of the genesis of that in the back and forth between the original proposal and what Robert Holmes is trying to do with it, because he's trying to sort of keep as much of the Egyptology stuff, that kind of angle in it, but also say, right, okay, how can we make the science fiction bit or the kind of the terraforming of Mars bit work, until they clearly reach a point where they say, right, okay, we have to jettison the seeds or the whatever they are, going to the moon and just kind of focus in on, this particular part of the story. But I think you also see that Robert Holmes is trying to be very sensitive and, generous with Lewis Griefer, and clearly respecting him as a writer, not to hurt his feelings and saying, this isn't going to work. And you get the sense that he's very invested in the character of Professor Fawzi, for example, and he's trying to hang on to him and say, well, maybe he could do this, and maybe this would make more sense, and we could keep him in. Of course, he obviously gets completely deleted from the end product, but you get a sense that he's really trying to hold together the bits that clearly mattered to Griefer in his original proposal.
Yep, I've just been doing a quick bit of Googling there and just seeing a bit more about Lewis Griefer. And according to Wikipedia, Lewis Griefer, 19th December 1915 to the 18th of March 2003, was an English writer for film, television and radio. Griefer was born in London, England. After wartime service in the Royal Air Force, he pursued a career in journalism and joined the London Evening Standard, where he worked from 1952 to 1956. He contributed sketches for radio, including for The Goon Show, amongst others. In 1969, he diversified somewhat and devised Whodunit for ATV, an audience participation series, which of course was later hosted by John Pertwee. I believe that would be the one, wouldn't it? Then Griefer also wrote episodes of The Prisoner, The General 1967, Crossroads, and the initial, but I think he did wasn't the General under a pseudonym? Yes, it was Joshua Adam. That was the correct name. And Crossroads, and an initial draft of Pyramids of Mars. And by the time this went into production, Griefer had returned to teach at the University of Tel Aviv and had little contact with television in his remaining years.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he would have been pretty much 60 at the time he was writing this.
Yeah.
So thinking back to 60-year-olds in the mid-70s, my kind of grandparents' generation, he would have been quite an elder statesman. So I would be fascinated to kind of learn more about him and what was he teaching? What was his academic interest at the University of Tel Aviv? Was it about media? Was it about writing? Was it about ancient history? I don't know. It might give us a bit more insight into how we ended up with this particular proposal. I have to get Toby Haydock onto it, I think.
Yep,
I'm
looking for Lewis
Griefer. Who's
Griefer
involved with The Prisoner. I really am. That's fascinating.
I do wonder if, again, what was missing from the proposal, which we got then in the original, was the stuff between the brothers and linking that to the Osiris as well. Brothers at arms and against each other. And I wonder whether that was a, jettisoning the moon bit actually got that bit of family in there, and that because those are very sad scenes between the Scarmans and Dr. Warlock.
Yep.
Warlock,
because they're all friends. So I think that's again where it differs hugely. Get rid of the military, concentrate on that tiny group, and make us feel sorry because the body count is high.
And it's not just high; it's also bleak. It's seldom as bleak, I think, in the whole canon.
Well, you're talking about
everybody dies, Sarah. Everybody dies.
Just this one, Sarah. Everybody dies.
It's horror of Fang Rock territory, really.
Yeah,
from that
fratricide, chummicide. Yep. I mean, chummicide's not the official term, but it should be
poachercide.
Poachercide, yeah.
Yep. I've just had a quick look. There's an obituary in The Guardian to Lewis Griefer. So it's quite an interesting read, just having a very quick look over that. So I will pop that in the show notes for those who are interested as well. So
curiously, if you try to get a picture or a photograph, any sort of image of Lewis Griefer, because it's Lewis and grief, the algorithm will churn out pictures of C.S. Lewis, who wrote A Grief Observed. So
interesting.
He goes under the radar completely.
Well, it's fascinating just looking at it there. It looks like he was born into poverty, pretty much living as a Jewish boy in the East End of London, and orphaned at a young age and ended up looking after his grandparents for a long time. And yeah, quite fascinating. He was a local newspaper editor before moving on to bigger things at the Evening Standard. So I'm not going to read all that. Go on, read it yourself, people. Go and read it. It's very interesting. So, Dave, any other thoughts from yourself on it? Did you have any particular highlights or anything you thought that was missed out that perhaps would have made good content had it appeared on screen?
Not really. I mean, I just found myself heavily distracted by it. In some ways, there was, for all the ideas and stuff, it was quite a generic sort of story, and it didn't really feel like Doctor Who. My main feeling is that what we got was a lot better, and it felt too different from Doctor Who to work for me personally, to be honest. There was, I was, as I said already, I was surprised at the involvement of the Brig, and I think I'd heard years ago that it was originally, even just the fact that the Doctor gets a phone call from the wife of somebody at this, I think that's what happens at the start, isn't it? And that just struck me as like, it reminded me of the way that people often say that Robert Banks Stewart didn't get Doctor Who and claims that he writes the Doctor and Sarah like Steed and Mrs. Peel because the Doctor is called in at the start of Seeds of Doom rather than just sort of arriving randomly and getting involved. So at that sense of my main takeaway was just that it really didn't feel like Doctor Who at all, and because I was aware of that very quickly, it kind of affected how much I was how seriously I took it to even think about what did we miss or what did we lose out on? Because I think because all the big major Egyptian sort of excavations took place at the start of the century, the last century, it made sense to do it then rather than making it a contemporary story. So it just really reaffirmed that what we got was better than what was initially sort of offered.
The thing that I thought that was perhaps missing was, I love the stuff with the scorpion bites, because I thought that's very good and sort of as a way of getting people under control. I thought that was quite a nice thing. I can't see how it would have worked into Pyramids, but I thought that's quite a nice idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea, and that would have worked quite well in somewhere else, I suppose. Yeah. Oops.
John, anything that you would have liked to have seen included?
Not really. What I liked, and it would have been interesting to see if they could have done it convincingly, is the whole thing about, rather than conventional mummy strangulation, they had the wisp of bandage throttling people. As someone who loves a bit of M.R. James, or a lot of M.R. James, that kind of resonated quite a lot with me, and I thought that's quite an interesting take. We always think of like the mummy, strangling the life out of people, and in fact, not that long ago in Lot 342, was it? Mark Gatiss's adaptation of his ghost story for Christmas, based on Arthur Conan Doyle's story. Again, there's a lot of that. So we had a mix of that and the kind of the compression death. But I liked the idea of the snaking bandage.
Yeah, I could imagine Mary Whitehouse not liking that very much.
Yeah, and it probably would have been quite hard to pull off well.
Yeah, you think they struggled with the TARDIS key floating so little?
So who knows what that would have looked like? But I just thought conceptually, from as an idea, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, they would have done it backwards and reversed it on video disc. That's what what they would have done. There'd be a paragraph in Envision where they talked about how George Galaccio had an argument with a sports PA to get hold of the video disc. That sort of thing.
With a bit of gurning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's another interesting bit further on that Robert Holmes notes, and it involves the mummies being in plastic pyramids, which I think is a lovely image.
Yeah.
As well, a bit like the end of Web of Fear as well, with the Doctor sitting inside the control one there. Again, the plastic pyramids which the mummies used to set up the rocket control center, where did they come from?
Yeah,
because that's something that sort of makes it into the final version, that image. But again, the Osiris warhead. Also, where did that come from? Was that inside another sarcophagus?
Because it's massive, and they threw it up quickly. They got it built pretty sharpish. It's like very impressed that whichever crew company they used to build that.
And again, it was a really nice character options playset with a cardboard warhead and things like that. So you could put your mummies and your Marcus Scarman figure there, and so many figures from that one story. Do we know anybody who could tell us about them? Maybe we should ask.
Oh, that would be good. Give him a call just now.
I will message him.
Yeah, why not?
I think that it's a fascinating document. These are 13 pages, and you get to see, Robert Holmes, you're basically showing his workings. And I think that's something that we don't really get to see that often. I mean, I've got the Robert Holmes biography over there, which is called A Life in Words, and I haven't actually read it yet. I got it for Christmas last year, so I should add that onto the pile instead of reading all these other books. But I think that would be a good one to have a look through and see what other notes and such like survive. So, Stevie, was there anything from the outline you'd have liked to have seen that wasn't in the story but perhaps was in the earlier drafts?
I don't think so. I think it was a fine draft. It would have been interesting to see what they'd have done with it. I felt it was easily droppable into a Hartnell or more a Troughton sort of, Ice Warriors, Seeds of Death. I felt that as it was written, it would have just dropped into something like that. So I don't think there was anything that I could really have said, I've missed off to that. I think what they then did, what they took, the Egyptian stuff, all the mythology, I think that was great, and I think that's what they should have done, and they did.
Something that struck me when reading this and indeed listening to it again was there's an awful lot of detail here. There's like 4 pages of storyline, and Big Finish have made an awful lot out of an awful lot less. And given that we had Fourth Doctor adaptations of the original Return of the Cybermen and Doctor Who and the Ark, and
very true.
Genesis of Terror, it makes me think, this would actually be quite interesting as an audio to see what somebody like John Dorney would do with it to try and give it that focus and make it work.
Definitely, because Genesis of Terror, I think they only had the script for episode 1, and then they'd got a few of the actors to read out, very much as our guest contributors did today, read out the sort of synopsis of everything else. Yeah, that was a good package. That it worked really well as a Blu-ray bonus feature. It was all very, very interesting. That's a good shout. You should make some calls.
As if I would do that. So, but then also,
Kenny start to influence things at Big Finish? Really?
Just because I've had 2 things happen. So
one's quite significant, really, isn't it? One's quite significant.
Yeah.
Is that public yet? Do people know this?
Yes, it's out now. You can talk about it if you like.
Okay. Kenny's responsible for the casting of BF's latest 12th Doctor performer.
Oh.
Yeah, it is the one and only Mr. John Culshaw, because I saw him at his show in Edinburgh a couple of years ago. Jen and I went through and saw it, and he was great. And at one point he did a Billy Connolly, and I just thought, that's really, really good. And see if you posh that up just a little bit, you're virtually at Peter Capaldi. And I texted Nick Briggs just in case you're interested, and gave him that as a tip-off, and Nick thought, okay, interesting. So when it came to the planning stage, they got John to audition, and they've cast him. And so John wasn't aware of this when I spoke to him a few weeks ago, and obviously he appeared on our target audience episode about the target audiobooks, and he was delighted. So I think we've got some credit in the bank should we ever need John Culshaw back in the podcast.
Definitely. Get him on to just do his Billy Connolly voice and talk about jobbies.
He may not know what a jobby is, which makes
I'm sure funnier. He does. John's a very cultured man. He's been around. John
Cultured Shaw. Yeah. Which, of course, we saw down in Greenock.
Oh. Yes. Yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day, actually, because someone had chips at work, and I was remembering the chips that they gave us at the preview of the Lina Zavaroni musical.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
It's very good. Down in your territory, John.
Ah, well, thanks for getting in touch.
From 2 years ago. Sorry, mate.
We'll get you next time.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry.
Whoever.
John, I'm sorry. I had no idea you were such a big fan of Lina Zavaroni.
Well, what can I say? As someone of a certain vintage, again, seeing her on Opportunity Knocks and all that. Yeah.
Oh, well. The other thing that I did was introduce Big Finish to Matthew Jacobs and got him to write an 8th Doctor audio, which came out last year. So that's my 2 things that I've done.
That's right.
So
that's right. Very good it was too. I just pre-ordered the next couple of 8th Doctor sets the other night. So actually, a few weeks ago, I'm saying that now I think about it. It wasn't the other night at all. Yes, it was. And it's the time of year. I always find when it starts getting darker outside is when I find it's time to listen to the Eighth Doctor. So yes, I'm looking forward to the next couple of sets coming. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with Pyramids of Mars.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But still, sorry, Doctor Who and the Pyramids, or is it Who and the Pyramids of Mars?
Yes. The Eighth Who, as played by Paul McGann.
So let's go around the table and have some final closing thoughts on Doctor Who and the Pyramids of Mars.
Favourite story. Absolutely favourite story. And I think what they eventually got out of it is brilliant. And I will watch and read variations of that and cheer on Sutek. It does occur to me that the Doctor killed him in that episode. Actually meaningfully killed him, which is different. We have, I don't know if it's the first time, we're not talking about fixed points, but we're talking about changing time and possible futures, which I think for that time is great. Thoroughly enjoyed the Blu-ray extras there, finding out what could have been, what started it, but I think at the end of the day, really good rewrites, really good performances, and a story that will stand the test of time.
It's very well regarded. It deserves it. Paddy Russell did a great job. Tom and Liz are at the top of their game. Really supported really well the guest cast. Fascinating being able to experience the original sort of ideas. It's just, again, we keep saying the Blu-ray box sets are just astonishing. All the extra value that they bring us. And it's been really nice sort of bringing this version of it to life and having a chat about it.
Yeah, as the chaps have said, I think it's a tremendous story. One of my favourites. As I said, it looms large in my own memory from watching it on the screen as it was been broadcast. So many good things, and we haven't mentioned Gabriel Wolf's performance as Sutek, but that's come up so many times in other episodes. I know. Yeah, so many things I could say, but the first time that I ever heard the words priest hole uttered in public, and it embarked me on a lifelong journey of discovery thereafter. So that's all I'm going to say.
Love it. I mean, for me, it's interesting having seen the seeds, which we didn't grow on the moon, but the seeds were very much planted by Lewis Griefer and Robert Holmes. Absolutely saw them through to growing that wonderful crop of glorious episodes. And this analogy, I'm really, really drawing it out. I'll stop it there because, I'm glad he reaped what he sowed and we thoroughly enjoyed it. So there we go. Fantastic. Well, I think I may have to do some inquiries to see what else I can find and have a look through those other Blu-rays of mine and see what I can find on there. What other outlines could we discuss? I have some ideas.
Excellent.
The ancient texts.
Maybe there was an original Genesis of the Daleks.
Oh, there is. Genesis of Terror.
Oh.
I may even have a copy of it on my hard disk as part of my Vortex research. So there we go. If you've enjoyed today's episode, people, please do feel free to leave a review on your podcatcher of choice. You can follow us on social media as Power of 3 Pod. That's Power of 3 with a number 3. We're on Blue Sky at Finished Scene. And of course, we have a Facebook group. And we'll probably share a couple of pages from this document on there. But we'll not be putting the whole thing up because if you want it, go and buy the Blu-ray and support the official releases. In fact, we'll do random pages so you can't actually piece it all together. That's evil, but that's what we'll do.
That'll do. That's fair.
Absolutely. So, gent, thank you so much. It's been great to see you all, as ever.
Very much so. Nice to see everyone.
Nice to see everyone.
Of course, now it comes to that point in the episode where I'm going to be looking for some musical nominations with which we'll play out. So, we'll start with yourself, John.
Oh, well, I think the obvious one is Walk Like an Egyptian. We've probably had that before.
We did have that when we did the previous version. I do have a thought in mind, but I'll leave it to you, see if anybody comes up with matches.
Pyramids by Frank Ocean?
I hadn't thought of that. Okay,
right. Stick that in your sarcophagus.
And then we shall have we can put that to the vote. Dave, do you have any nominations?
The first thing that springs to mind is Girl from Mars by Ash.
Oh
yeah.
That's good. Stevie, do you have any you want to throw in any from musicals or anything you might know?
Yes, there's Life on Mars, but of course we know there is because Sutek's there, and then there's some ice warriors and some colonial gentlemen wandering around having a battle. So yeah.
I was thinking of Sowing the Seeds.
All right, Seeds of Love
from Tears for Fears. So there we go. We're having a vote. We're democratic here in this pod. What do we want to go with?
I can't stand Tears for Fears. Sorry.
That's mine ruled out.
I'm not fussed, but whatever you like.
We could do a medley. You know, that's always a great compromise.
Yes, let's have a mash-up.
Yeah.
15 seconds of each tops. That would work.
That's good. Perfect. So, let's make our farewells and go, like at the end of the Five Doctors.
Exactly like the end of the Five Doctors. We're all going.
There's only four of us here.
We're all going to climb into the same TARDIS and then split off. Bye, folks. Please check out the Earth 2 podcast. See you next time.
Bye, everybody. Don't forget to email the Earth 2 podcast
at gmail.com.
Yep.
Yes, and thank you for listening and watching on YouTube, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be invited to come along, and yeah, just don't disturb the sarcophagus in your cellar.
Or indeed your priest hole.
Well, you may say that, but I couldn't possibly comment.
Bye.
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 Do you remember the time when you would go from Mars? I don't know if you knew that. I would stay up late playing cards and you were into and cigars. And she never told me her name. I still love you, the girl from Mars.
Take a look at the long man beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know who's in the best-selling show. Is there life on Mars? Kick out the storm and make the
shining like diamonds in a rocky world. Rocky world. Our skin like bronze and our hair like cashmere. As we march to the rhythm on the palace floor. Chandeliers inside the pyramids tremble from the force. Symbols crash inside the pyramids. Voices fill up the house. Set the cheetah.